juicy fruit, opal
fruits.
Opal fruits.
Yeah.
Made to make your mouth water.
Indeed. Yeah, and they change the name.
Fresh with a taste of citrus for refreshing fruit flavours.
The very lovely Colin Gold's outtake there. Having a look at my bowl of sweets that I have on my desk, containing, well, not many of them now because people keep nicking them. My opal fruits, or starburst, I think they're called now. Anyway, let's get on with it. Welcome to It's Art at the End of the Day, episode 2. I hope you enjoyed the first one with Yana, and if you're back, thank you very much. Let's start with Colin, another artist I've met here down at the Royal Albert Wharf, East End of London. It's fascinating. Love his art so much. Very clever. I don't know what else to say really. It's inspiring. But here we go. I'd like to introduce to you Colin Gold.
My name is Colin Gold and I like adventure.
Right. I'm going to start off with the usual one. When did you know, or when did you get into art?
Well, at school, so I would have been from 13 onwards. Actually, no, I can go back even further. My sister bought me a set of oil paints for a birthday present, and I was probably about 8 or 9, and I painted quite a big oil painting of a market flower girl, and I used the back of spoons as my sort of spatula blobs, so I actually could make 3-dimensional chrysanthemums in oil paint. Of course, it took weeks and weeks of it. And it was a woman that was sort of had a wavy body holding loads of flowers, and my mother's friend was so impressed that they bought it for £5. And when they said to me, my mother's friends, how much do you want for this? I said £5. My mother nearly fainted because obviously it was quite a lot of money then.
Yeah.
And they just gave me the £5 and put it on their wall. And I often wonder,
your limit there.
I often wonder what happened to that painting, because I'm really quite interested to see it now.
Yeah, it would be.
So yeah, I mean, I was always into art. I mean, I grew up in a family where originally my parents wanted me to be a concert pianist and my sister to be a ballerina.
You still play?
So I can still play. I don't have a piano now, but I worked Saturday jobs and anything I could do, cleaning cars. And I bought a baby grand piano. They helped me with the money. The problem was the piano took up half our living room, and in the same living room was the television. And the television won in the end. But I used to go to classical music lesson classes every week, and my sister went to stage school and ballet school and became a ballerina. And then at one point I thought, do I really want to spend 10 hours a day practicing? And I was at the age where I wanted to do everything. So I also drew at the same time.
Kind of lose focus, didn't you?
I also drew at the same time. So and I drew all the time. And when I was at school, where everybody went to play sport, and I did play sport, I played rugby, believe it or not, because I could run very fast, in brackets, away from people. I used to sit drawing furniture, designing furniture.
Yeah.
My grandfather had furniture shops in Deptford High Street at that time, 2 furniture shops. So obviously there's a seed of interest that came from my grandfather. And I kept all my drawings. And when I was removed from schooling, my father took me around to art colleges, and I got into one, providing I took my A-levels, my school levels, in the same year as I did my foundation course, which I did. I jumped a year, I got my diplomas from that, and then I went on to Hornsey College of Art, which was very radical at the time, with all the sit-ins and so on. And again, I jumped a year.
Bit of a rebel then.
Bit of a rebel. So I got all my qualifications in interior design, interior architecture, not structural work, but I got all of that. And I was working by the time I was 21. I mean, a proper job. In fact, Covent Garden. And Covent Garden was still a market. and I lived in a house in North London with a lot of design art students. The two girls upstairs made the costumes for Doctor Who.
Oh wow!
And we used to steal them when they went to work and get on the Piccadilly line and go into Covent Garden dressed in things like boiler suits made from the Financial Times, because it was pink and it was lovely, or dinosaur heads and funny hands. And my friend and myself used to go into the office dressed like that. And we had a fabulous boss. And the only condition of us wearing what we wanted to was if a client came into the office, we would get locked in the storeroom. So and when the client left, they would unlock the door, and we would carry on working. But in this architectural office, there was a big die-line print machine on the landing, and we were in a building with different companies on the buildings, and the two of us used to stand by the die-line machine, stinking of ammonia, dressed as dinosaurs, printing out drawings for the architects in the office.
I'd love to have been a fly on the wall, wouldn't it?
And every morning we used to walk through the market, and all the vendors and the people in the market used to scream things at us, like, "What are you today, you two?" And all sorts of obscenities, but very funny. And the Piccadilly line enjoyed our presence.
I can imagine.
But in those days, you see, Gilbert and George were in Neal Street in Covent Garden.
Yeah.
In the Acme Gallery, standing on a box, singing underneath the arches.
Yeah.
So it was a time of sort of experiment in London.
It's kind of lost that a bit, do you think?
And it's definitely lost the edge.
Spontaneity and all that.
In 72 I had a pink Mohican. And it came from a film.
You haven't got a picture of that. I need to see that. I need to see that.
And I've got some of the hair, pinkissimo. I've got some of the hair.
I definitely need to see that.
And the whole art creative thing just spread, not just what you were trained to do, but the way you lived and so on.
Yeah.
I mean, it was very constructive, and it was a wonderful, wonderful time. I went into Hard Rock once, and Cher was there with now who was the blonde guy? She was living with the musician,
Not Sunny.
No, Altman. No, what's his name? Long blonde hair. It was a rock star.
I don't think of him off the top of my head.
And I remember that a waitress walked past with a big plate of food and dragged the back of her hair across the food plate, and she turned around, and I was sitting there laughing with my pink Mohican, which, Anyway, and there were lots of things that happened in those days. It was wonderful.
That's what's inspiring, isn't it?
It was like we weren't consciously breaking barriers, but being part of the Hornsey school generation, I'm not sure what schools do it now, because everything is obviously electronic, online and so on. Then you had to demonstrate it in the street. You couldn't just sit in front of a screen and do it on screen. So it was much more visible. And people met more because they didn't meet online. So you would go to, for instance, in Soho, there were specific cafes for specific art schools. The Cappuccetto was for Hornsey. The Pat Vows for people from St Martin's. So that everybody after hours used to meet in those cafes. So there was a sort of a rivalry around Old Compton Street and Soho. So people were on the street. It wasn't in front of a screen. So they were great times.
Yeah,
and I had a great boss. I have to say that my boss encouraged us, my friend and myself, who in fact my friend Alan Cleaver went on to create fashion, Biblos in Italy, which became incredibly well known just before Prada. Multi-millionaires now. And he left interior design and architecture through Maison de Marie Claire in Paris, went on to Italy and became a very big star. It was a whole year. Paul Smith, for instance, was with us in the house. Paul was still in Nottingham, in his little shop in Nottingham. His first show was in their flat in Paris, and we had to borrow chairs from everybody and do a whole number. It was a particular period where all the people in one group from the Royal College, from Hornsey College of Art, gelled together and created that whole movement. And look at me now, making plaster wigs for my paintings on the Ganges.
Since I've been here, I've been inspired by yourself by John,
That's very
by
kind,
Chris,
thank you.
and other artists that I've met along the way. I've spoken to a young lady earlier, which my first episode, Yana. They've all inspired, even though my stuff is totally different to everybody else's, because it's.
Well, it's another facet of the mirror ball, actually.
It's
still a mirror ball.
It's given me other things to look at. I look at the world in a different place anyway. I'm always staring at something. But
well, a lot of people look and they don't see.
Yeah.
And the thing about any type of art training, in a way, is they teach you to look and see.
Yeah.
Because you can walk along the street and not notice anything.
Yeah.
But the curse of an art training is, unfortunately, you notice everything. The crack in the wall, the colour that's faded in the corner.
Yeah.
You notice everything.
Oh, yeah.
But and if you don't notice them, then your training failed a little bit.
Yeah.
Because that is your library of information, and you use everything you see somehow subconsciously in what you produce.
Yeah.
Anyway, in this office, I started off redoing Oxford Street, so I was redoing Burton shops, Boots, opening whole shop fronts up to the street because nobody had done that before. At the corner of Oxford Circus, there was Peter Robertson, which was a big store but with little windows. We smashed all those out and did Top Shop. And then after working along Oxford Street, we then started on Bond Street. And then from that, I then got commissioned to do computer showrooms for some reason. IBM, Digital, all those computer showrooms. And from that, it then led to, strangely, hotels. I don't know what the link was, but we started to get hotel projects. So I started to do hotel renovations and building and restoring. And then from hotels, it then led on to palaces in the Middle East. So then I went to interesting enough, before I started to commute to Saudi, I was working in Tel Aviv for 2 years, redesigning a 60s office block into a hotel. And so when I came back, of course, I had to change my passport and all sorts of things. And then I started on palace work. The office was in West London near the airport, so it was very easy to commute backwards and forwards. But I did that for about 15 years. And I think the last job that I worked on was in Athens for probably the richest family in Greece, who were involved in oil business. And the brief was just make it look fabulous, and she disappeared for a few months, came back, and that was the last job I did. And then, of course, COVID and all sorts of other things happened.
So when did you move down here?
Now's the time, I thought, to change direction. Yeah. You know, when I was late 60s, I thought I'll change direction now. And I always liked drawing, but I thought, let's see if I can paint. Let's see if I can record all the things that I saw on my travels and am still seeing on my travels. See if I can actually record it through my brain, through my hand, onto something. Wow. So this is a whole learning curve for me, which I'm probably 15% there. I've got a lot more to learn, but I'm enjoying every minute. So let's see where this goes. Don't know where this goes.
I've had the privilege of photographing your 3D
images.
It's just blown away by
it's very difficult in India to capture the essence of what you see, because it's so strong. Yeah. I mean, you see 360 degrees of life. So if you're sitting in a car, look out the left window and there's Mercedes showrooms. You look out the right hand window and people are living in pipes on the pavement. The contrast is so great.
I need to get it.
And bombing along a dual carriageway, and suddenly you see a truck coming towards you with 50 people hanging off the side, and nobody crashes, and everybody's, so it's organised chaos. How do you capture that energy and that recklessness on something which is three-dimensional? It's almost impossible. Yeah. And what you have to do is you have to mash up the feeling that you had from that experience, interpret it in your own way, and at the end see if you've captured the excitement of that moment. So that's basically what you're doing. If you can get the flavour, then you're sort of there.
Yeah. Would you say India's your best
inspirational
place?
I think so, yeah. I think without question. Different countries give you different things. China, very bizarre.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't fully understand the culture, but you come across things which simply don't make sense. Egypt, things are so much bigger than you can ever imagine.
Yeah.
I mean, it just hits you in the face, the scale of things. Saudi, the possibilities between an older generation, which is full of glamour and glitter, perhaps not for the right reasons,
Yeah.
to the children who are now grown up, who have travelled the world,
Yeah.
who want the best quality but relevant to today. So what's happening in Saudi at the moment is extraordinary. Unfortunately, there are side effects of steamrolling over a village.
Yeah.
But if they actually do what they say they're going to do, and it's already started, it's going to be breathtaking in 50 years. Breathtaking.
Is this the line?
The line.
Yeah.
I mean, it's 170 kilometres, but they've only done 1 kilometre so far. So they've got quite a lot to do.
It's got a little bit,
but,
yeah.
you know, I mean,
Yeah.
travelling along the line in almost ballistic vehicles is going to be extraordinary.
Yeah. I think they'll do it.
And the mirrored sides, the only thing that it could create, which we're trying to stop, is global warming, because 170 kilometres of mirrored sides,
Yeah.
which is actually how you're going to get the energy
Yeah.
source from the sun, will reflect the heat back somewhere. It's going to go somewhere.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think they're incredibly brave, and in a way they're the new pyramid builders.
Yeah.
And it will happen.
Yeah, and I think it's always got to have something
Yeah.
in this life.
Did I say in the middle of that I worked for McLaren Formula One?
No, that's interesting.
Now, I was poached from the job I was working on by Ron Dennis, who at that time was running McLaren.
Yeah.
And he's probably one of the most, difficult is the wrong word to use, but the most exacting client I've ever had.
Okay.
Because every detail had to be hairline perfect.
Yeah.
And if it wasn't, you do it again. And you do it again. And you do it again.
Yeah.
So if you were laying floor tiles that were 1/2 kilometre long, unless that line was dead straight,
Yeah.
somebody would have to pay somewhere to remove them all and relay them.
Wow.
But because of that, you wanted to do the best you could. He wanted the best
Yeah.
he could present. And you ended up with a building built by Norman Foster. I do all the interiors. And it is breathtaking,
Yeah.
the building that makes the cars. But sitting next to engineers that are actually revving up and
Yeah.
building the cars every day, quite fabulous.
Their workshops are now clinical, aren't they? You wouldn't think it was.
They're
like a
unbelievable.
garage.
The one in Woking
Yeah.
is unbelievable.
It's
It's like going into an operating theatre.
yeah, more like a surgery.
There's not one
Yeah.
speck of dust. You're not allowed anything on your desk. Nothing.
Oh, really?
So even the bottled water is McLaren bottles, so that the
Wow.
design fits
Yeah.
with the rest of the aesthetic. It's quite wonderful.
Yeah.
And the people are obsessed with working there, which is fabulous. There's not one person that doesn't want to work there. So that's quite something.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the Queen came and, drenched in sort of lavender fragrance, and everything was lavender. And she's very lavender. She was. So that was very nice. We got to meet everybody.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that sort of, it's been quite a ride.
Yeah. Well, you're more interesting than me.
No, it has nothing to do with, not more interesting, it's just a different type of interest.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Because interesting is also walking on the street and seeing somebody extraordinary.
Yeah.
Think, how am I going to capture that quick? And I've worked with some very nice people. Not all of them.
No, but that makes it
But
interesting as well,
everybody
doesn't it?
has their own journey.
Of course.
And, paths do cross, Think of on a motorway, everyone has different cars.
Yeah, and we can't all
You
be the
some
same
you can
and have the same
overtake
views.
and
Yeah.
just don't cut in front of me. Because that would be the end of your days.
So you got the wigs you're doing now. How many are you doing?
Well, I'm doing what I'm doing is in the Ganges. There's lots of holy men that arrive in the most sacred cities. They have beyond vision. So what you see is probably only half the distance of what they see.
Yeah.
You don't know how they've achieved it. But when you meet them, there's such calm and peace in their gaze that you think, well, how can I ever get that? But you can't, because you haven't done this incredible journey they've done. They have
Yeah, but you've got your own
wild
journey,
hair.
haven't you?
They have wild hair. wild clothes, probably nothing bought, things which have developed with them and so on. And I'm doing at the moment I'm doing 3 sardus, that's what they're called, and I'm trying to represent them. But to paint, simply just to paint that on the surface, you wouldn't capture the chaos of physically what they look like, but to get the inner light of what they actually project. So I'm trying to do that, and it's almost impossible. But so far, I'm onto my 3rd hair, which is a mixture of plaster and somebody's donated a load of curtain tiebacks, and because they're plaited and twisted. Well, actually, no. Unbelievably, when you untwist the linen curtain tiebacks and natural fibres, you get something which is almost identical to dreads. And what I'm doing is I'm dipping them in plaster, getting them rigid. I'm trying to get the form, which I'm almost there, and then that will be set into a sort of a face form, and then I'll paint the whole thing. So it'll be sort of naive, but if I can capture the spirit and the feeling I got when I saw them, then I'll be very happy. So it's always a challenge, and also the first couple of weeks is always quite difficult, and then suddenly everything clicks into place.
Friday.
Oh well, that was somebody listening in. So that's my latest, and I've got 2 more canvases just sitting on the floor, which I'm going to do a couple of portraits of that, and then I've got, I think, 20 pieces, and then it needs to be documented, and then I'm going to see if I can then ask for a show. I've never seen everything together.
No,
because the minute I finish something, I wrap it.
What I was going to ask you. Have you got?
When I did a show here in the galleries here, I hadn't seen it all together. So I'd been working for 2 years making the models and so on and so on. So just to see it in one place, for me, was an achievement.
Oh, definitely.
Whether people came or not, I'm very flattered if they do. But you can see where you are in your progression. So that's what I'm trying to do with my Indian stuff, and then I'm going to move on to something else.
But and you've got all those models, which is amazing.
Well, I don't know what I'm going to do. They're probably going to burn them all.
No,
the bonfire of the of the vanities. They're just sitting there, But a lot of the previous work was political, because it was how India and COVID worked together, because they didn't quite, because only people really in the cities got all the vaccines. People in villages were just left. And that's why one of the biggest pieces I've got is an Indian village sitting on a hospital trolley. It's the story of that. And there's some war pieces as well. And that continues. But these pieces were related to Syria at the time. And there's Venice's sinking. And that's very important because I go to Italy a lot because my partner's Italian. So I have an Italian family for more than 40 years, and my mother's from a very old Italian family.
So you speak.
We found some of the family tombs dated 1490, which is quite a history. And the name was Mazza, which is the same as the coffee machines. So we're trying to find the link now with the family, see if there's a link there. So that's my mother's family. My father's family is Northern Europe. So at least I grew up with nice food.
Which is very important. I do love to eat.
So there we are. That sort of potted history of who and where I am now.
What you got planned in the future after?
More travel. But I've got to finish this little group of things I'm doing now. It's like squeezing a sponge to get the stuff out of my head to make it open for the next thing. It might be a continuation, but I have to get rid of what's in my head at the moment. There's probably another 20 items in my head. I'm not sure I'll do all of them because I need something fresh. But scale is always a problem for me because my studio's not that big, and I'd like to actually do something really big. Perhaps 4 meters long, 3 meters high. I'd like to paint a whole scene in India.
I'm more than willing to come in here and use.
But perhaps that'll be the last piece I do. Is actually all the ideas of the 20 paintings I'll put into one, and then that would be the conclusion for that, and then I can move on. So you never know.
So
you never know what's brewing.
Is there always a piece in your head?
Always.
Yeah.
Always. I've got the 2 canvases on the floor with nothing on them yet, and I'm still in the middle of this one I'm doing now.
Yeah.
So no, it's always the next thing. So I'll have to start saving up for paints.
Yeah, this is it. The materials.
I'm
isn't
just a poor man living on a pension. No, but life's expensive, so every time you go and buy the simplest thing, it's 20 quid, whatever it is, more paints, 40 quid, some canvases and so on and so on. So, I mean, you know...
It does add up.
No, nothing ever goes down.
No.
So I'll end up literally, I don't know, I'll find a way.
Yeah.
Even if it means sewing all my old T-shirts together to make a collage, I'll find a way.
Yeah, but that's what it's all about, isn't it?
Collaborations for me have never been easy in art,
Right.
or say producing an art piece. Collaborations in design is essential, or you can't do it.
Okay.
So, if you think that I've worked for 45 plus years, in architecture and art and interiors and furniture and so on, you need a team of people.
Yeah.
Because if you're doing something structurally, you need the best structural engineer. If you're doing something in timber, you need people that actually understand the nature of timber and how much you can push it and the boundaries. So it's best to work in a team with a team of people. It's like a singer, like Gaga or somebody like that. Gaga in particular, she's got an incredible voice.
Yeah.
And if you hear her singing jazz or all the varied music she does, not just pop, she's quite incredible. But when you think of somebody like Madonna, unless she's got that team of 1,000 people around her, who is she? She's just another singer. Nothing really special. So you need a team of people to offer that end result.
In art you don't. Is that because of...
I don't know. I said in art, I would find that difficult.
Because you're putting yourself into that piece and someone else being there...
Well, obviously the journey of production's really important, but I have a partner who is my worst and best critic.
Which is a good thing, really.
Because we have, although similar tastes, very different ways of doing things.
Yeah.
So I will get comments like, the perspective on that's not so great, or why are her eyes looking only one way or the nose is the other way? And I just say, Picasso, Francis Bacon, that happens to be the way my brain to hand produces.
It's within, isn't it?
And I agree with you that the perspective might not be that great, but the next one will be better.
Yeah.
And it's an instinct.
Yeah.
And perhaps my instincts will be sharpened for the next piece.
Mm-hmm.
But if I start altering things to make it perfect, it doesn't become spontaneous.
No, I don't think
and you'll quite often
perfect.
find somebody likes a bad portrait than one that's perfect, because you might as well take a photograph if you want the perfect image. But then with photography, you can deliberately not make it perfect, which quite often ends up something more exciting.
Yeah, I don't have high-end cameras to get
shaking a camera when you're taking something and you get a blurred image sometimes
I like
is much more stimulating. And there's a story there, and I'm a storyteller.
Yeah.
So I like anything I produce. I like to have it as a story.
Yeah.
If I produce a red square as a piece of art, and people have in the past, I would not be able to do that because I wouldn't be able to justify the red square. But if there's a story with perhaps people or shapes or something, I can at least discuss why I've done that.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It does make sense,
yeah. What else have I got to offer you? I can't think. Because as I'm talking, I actually want to hold a brush or something in my hand and physically show you what I'm talking about, as opposed to just use words to try and describe something.
Yeah.
Do I work to music? I like white sound in the background.
Oh, okay.
I get nervous if it's too quiet because it puts me on the spot. And if I've got white noise in the background, I can avoid in my head some things that I don't think I'm quite capable of doing yet. And if I've got music I like, I'll be listening to the music.
Yeah.
So I won't be actually producing with my
Fair
hand.
enough. Yeah, I understand that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
People talking in the background quietly, I find fascinating because I just want to listen.
Yeah.
So if it's just, droning on the radio, okay.
Yeah.
I always have Radio 4 on. That's no relation to droning, but it does happen sometimes. Radio 3 is quite intense.
Yeah.
So you either listen or you turn it off.
Yeah.
And pop stations, I find totally distracting.
Yeah.
Especially if something's got a rhythm or a beat, because my body immediately tunes in to what's happening.
Yeah, so
I find that
on the music and
I concentrate on just whatever the rhythm or the beat is.
Yeah.
Drum and bass. Can you imagine trying to paint a drum and bass? You'd be stabbing the surface all the time. At home, a lot of people do a lot of prep work before they go on to the finished item. I do perhaps a couple of scribbles at home, so I know the direction I'm going, but it's rare that I would use a pad or whatever to do almost a finished cartoon of what I'm trying to draw.
Right, so you don't pre-plan.
No, but I would work out the shapes that are going within the area, not so much detail, because I'll photograph detail that I like, and I'll keep that on in my now 22,000 shots that are on my phone. And I know where those are.
Yeah,
unbelievably.
that's good. Yeah.
I've got years worth, and I know where they are. So if I need a particular cloud formation or a person's expression, I'll go to, I don't know, Jaisalmer, or I'll go to Southend or somewhere, because I know that shot is within that batch.
Yeah.
My memory's very good like that.
Yeah, that's good.
Let's hope it stays like that.
Yeah,
Because the
but I think
age.
it will.
Yeah, I'm sure it will.
It will, because you're doing something.
Because I'm
like
doing it
that.
every day, actually. My mother used to do a crossword every day, complicated ones, and she did it until she was about 90. Every solitary morning she would get up and do a crossword with her breakfast.
Yeah.
Fantastic therapy for your brain. And if ever I couldn't spell anything, or I needed it, I would just phone her up and say, how do you spell this? What do you do with that? She would have the answer immediately. And it's because she constantly
I think
did press-ups in her brain.
Part of your body, personally. The brain keeps
I don't know about that.
Well, might not be in your case, it might be. Yeah, I like to keep my head going rather than anything else, because I think that controls your body anyway.
I mean, in London, every weekend, I go and see something, because London is quite incredible.
Yeah.
You will always find something new, always find a new exhibition, something happening, a new restaurant to go and look at, not necessarily eating, open air dancing, Spitalfields, fabulous. If you go and watch the open air tango, the Milonga, at a weekend, I'm not sure if it's still on at the moment, but just watching people and the combination of people, because in the Milonga, you go up to anybody in the crowd and they don't say no.
Okay.
So you get, like a 6'3" person dancing with somebody who's a metre high, of varying ages.
Yeah.
Just watching them is quite fabulous. So I'm a great people watcher.
That's definitely someone trying to drag me on.
And different areas of London obviously offer different things.
It's a forever changing.
Hackney to Sloane Square is two different planets.
Yeah.
But that's fabulous.
Exactly. I've photographed London and I keep moaning about, I'm done London, but I go back up there.
You can never do London. It's different
every time.
Go to Southall.
Southall.
Yeah. Go. I mean, just the different areas.
Yeah. You could. Yeah, I could spend my life in London. I need to travel. You've shown.
No, but travelling. But you see, travelling was part of my job.
Yeah.
My dad was a bit of an adventurer. But that's because he was in the Air Force, so he got to see things he would never have got to see. We grew up with hand tinted photographs of the Himalayas, correct way to say it, in our dining room. So I grew up with those images on the wall, all hand tinted in pinks and blues, delicate colours. And he would go, because he was stationed in one part in Rawalpindi, so they would go skiing. And then he went on to Burma, of which I've been to as well. Only because he'd been, and I remember the stories of of monkeys and things he used to tell us. Travel.
Your inspirations are people, artists or not artists, or just normal people. Have you
Normal
got any
people.
or artists? Have you got inspirations in your for your work? Have you been inspired by anyone to produce in a certain way, or does it not work like that?
I look at people.
Yeah.
Whether I'm inspired happens later.
Yeah.
Actually,
Right.
but you might as well. Is that? Are you turned on now?
I'm
Okay.
turned
So
on,
for
I'm
instance,
turned on, Cole.
so for instance, there's an artist, Louise Nevelson, makes these fabulous sort of sculptures out of wood and so on and so on. There are a lot of people that I look at and admire, and wonder how their technique grew into producing what they've done. So modern art, meaning art from perhaps the 1950s onwards.
Yeah.
I'm very interested in, because quite often they are techniques that you can learn from. Old masters, I'm just in awe of how they produced some of the really breathtaking paintings. Baldini, I mean, just fabulous. Van Dyck, fabulous. But they did it full time as their life's work.
Yeah.
And they would have studied under a master and developed their own technique from that master. We don't seem to work like that anymore. And there's a lot of things I really don't understand. And there's a few artists that I really don't. It would have to be explained to me, but I look at their work and think, are you conning us? Am I just not seeing it for what it is? Am I not understanding it? But some things I actually don't want to understand.
Yeah.
I mean, I find them offensive, but I suppose because I have that reaction and I'm not indifferent to them, they've done what they needed to do.
Yeah.
If you're indifferent to something, so it just becomes like wallpaper, I think that person has totally failed.
Because we're trying
in what
to
they're doing.
tell a story.
I mean,
like you say, shot.
Should I be saying people's names? I don't think I should really. But there's a couple of artists I think are completely conning the world.
Yeah.
And they're very, very well known.
Yeah.
And they command huge prices for their work. But I think, for God's sake, why do we need to see that?
Yeah.
But then that becomes censorship. So
right.
So then I'm wrong in even saying that. But I did challenge one of them. I did challenge one who had produced something for permanent public display in London about a year ago, and said, I just can't understand why you produced that when what the building represents surely deserves more. And I just got a barrage of abuse back.
Oh, really?
So not even justifying what they'd done, because what they had produced was all about them and not about the very specific brief that I think would have been given to them to produce what they did. But I just got a barrage, and I thought, that's obviously my problem, not theirs, because I suppose the reason they were chosen in the first place is to do what they do, not to answer a brief. And of course, the way I've been trained as an architect designer is to answer a brief.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean to say it's boring, because you interpret that as you want.
Yeah, you've got to put yourself in there.
But the commission that this person got, which is phenomenal commission, I just think is just terrible. Well, what can you do? That's my opinion.
Yeah.
And other people would say
it's a shame that everybody has to shoot that down.
No, but other people would say it's fabulous. Yeah. And I'll tell you off record who it is, but I'm not going to tell you on record who it is, because that would be bad manners. But I just go back to saying...
is it, because I'll cut it out?
No, but I just go back to saying, if you're indifferent to something, I think that person has failed. Because it becomes wallpaper.
Yeah.
And I mean, there is a whole section of the art world that produces decorative wallpaper for office receptions, for corporate headquarters who don't want to invest in art as a commodity.
Yeah.
So they'll have something that's pretty or colourful on the wall, which means nothing except interior decoration.
Yeah.
Interestingly enough, when I approached a very nice gallery in London, if I could bring my work and show them, because I thought it was a great space to show what I had, they said to me, "You don't find us, we find you." I mean, it was quite insulting. So I said, "Well, how do you know where I am?" They said, "We know. We've got scouts." I said, "Do your scouts come over to East London?" And I just got glared at.
Yeah.
And I just thought it was such bad manners. Just not even to give me any sense of encouragement. They could have said, "We've got a 10-year waiting list."
Yeah.
And I'm not sure we show that type of art in this gallery because we're very specific.
Is there a
But they
snub-
would just
is there
said,
a snobbery
"You don't."
within it?
It was a lot. It's. I would say it's a closed world.
Yeah.
Between
It's a shame.
gallerists and, yeah, I mean, basically they're selling product.
Yeah.
And if they can't sell it and they can't boost each other's ego,
Yeah.
or the gallery's ego, not personal ego, then they're not very helpful.
Yeah, I've written to, oh God knows how many places now.
I mean, when I
and
had
no,
my-
don't get answers back, and
No, but these were very arrogant. When I had my show here, somebody from Tate Britain came twice.
wow, yeah,
In fact, I saw this person last week, and they said that in order to get your work shown, you have to keep applying non-stop. Doesn't matter if it's in London or wherever,
yeah,
to try and be part of shows around the country. And it doesn't matter if you get one piece in, that one piece is important. But it takes a lot of energy
yeah,
to start packing things, applying things, and I just simply can't afford it. You know, I'm living on a pension, and it's quite an expensive process to start packaging and sending and then collecting,
yeah,
and that's just for them to look to see if they approve or not. You know, I mean, I was trying to enter into the portrait exhibition at the Portrait Gallery in Trafalgar Square, and I couldn't afford to do it.
No.
And also, I couldn't afford not just the entry fee, but taking things backwards and forwards, getting things packaged properly, on a maybe or a perhaps.
yeah,
And I'd rather spend that time producing
Yeah.
and painting than worrying if anything's going to get damaged or whatever. You know, so I don't know how you make that first move. An agent would help enormously.
yeah.
But the agent has got to believe in you.
That's right. Yeah,
Because if the agent is just selling, you know, a pair of chopsticks, there's not going to be much passion there, really, is there?
that's
They've
right.
got to believe in what you're doing.
yeah.
Yeah.
You need sponsor people to sponsor you and help you within that. I find.
Hmm.
I don't know how to do it. I'll just get into it. Exhibitions pay quite a lot for exhibitions. and
Well,
carry
the
on.
exhibition here, just to put something simple on, was £7,000
Well, yes.
because I had to pay for lighting,
Yeah.
because the lighting, you know, in the gallery was just fluorescent tubes, and it gets dark early all through the winter months.
Yeah.
The cost in the lighting was the electricians to put the lighting up more than the actual cost of the hire of the fittings, you know, and then of course, you know, canapes and drinks and
Yeah. Yeah.
framing.
Yes.
Framing
Yes,
is expensive. Getting the stuff there. I mean, £7,000 is quite a lot if you don't sell anything.
Yeah, that's right.
It's a lot for me. But then you go to a gallery in Cork Street, and there's a particular show on at the moment where the presentation is fantastic. And I said to the gallerist, "Wow, look at the frames are just." Oh, he said that was like £28,000 for the framing.
Wow.
So, you know, I mean, I could just burst into tears, which is not a pretty sight.
Yeah.
But
That's
I mean,
just slightly bit more than my IKEA ones for tenner.
no, I mean, what can I say?
Yeah.
Some things have to be presented in a way. Can I say something rude?
Of course.
Okay, a friend of mine who is one of them, probably the most famous yacht designers
Yeah.
around, Mr. Super Yacht. In his client's bathroom, he's got a photograph of something which looks like a pyramid of dates, figs.
Right.
And above it, it's got a pile of shit, but beautifully lit.
Yeah.
And that's in the client's toilet. But it's the presentation is so important.
Oh,
If you want to, I'm not talking about selling in Hackney.
Yeah.
I'm talking about if you want to actually try and get into the big boys, into Mayfair or into central London, the West End, you have to present things beautifully.
Yeah.
Because the people that are going to pay a reasonable sum, and that sum isn't inflated, it's because you've spent hours producing it. And not only have you spent hours producing it, it's taken you 40 years to get to the point of slashing that piece of canvas in the right place.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah, because that's not...
To paint 3 lines...
That's not accounted for, is it?
No. To paint 3 lines, to know where to put those 3 lines, might have taken you years and years.
Yeah.
But the 3 lines are perfect.
Yeah.
So it's worth the money. You know? I live in hope.
Well, anyway, thank you, Colin.
No,
Thank you very much.
I enjoyed that.
It was lovely
quite
to speak to
interesting.
you. It was nice to sit down and have a good conversation.
Well, it's quite interesting listening to myself because I don't normally. I just like blab on, and
nothing wrong with your blabbing.
because I don't normally. I just like blab on, and
nothing wrong with your blabbing. That was a very lovely Colin there. Apart from this being a podcast, and I'm thinking, I do this for entertainment, for information, I was going to say entertainment again. I don't know how can I put it. For various reasons, for people to listen to artists' point of view, lives, and everything like that. Selfishly, I'm learning a hell of a lot speaking to every single one of these people and fascinating their lives. I'm a nosy person at heart, so this is ideal for me. Delve into someone's psyche and find out what makes them tick. That being said, I have another gentleman coming along on episode 3 that again I've met near my studio. In fact, he's right next to me, and another interesting conversation we shall have about inspirations, life, and everything else to do with what they do. So please, if you're enjoying this, join me for episode 3 of It's Art at the End of the Day.